Happy Friday. It's May 29th, 2020. I wanted to drop a few thoughts, ideas, a little bit of my heart on you as we enter into the weekend, enter into our rest. We talked about Abraham, and I wanted to pick up there, talk about Joseph, and then prepare you for our Sunday Pentecost gathering, and we will look at the life of Esther. So Abraham has a calling from God. He's called out of his household. He's called to leave his kin, his security, his economic security, his religion, his culture. He's called to leave all of that behind and to go to a place that God was going to show him. And he does it. And when he does it, he has magnificent adventures and all kinds of things happen. And he finds himself discovering more and more of who God is, more and more of God's character. And out of that, God begins to have a more intimate relationship with him and enters into a covenant with a blood covenant with Abram. And then out of that covenant, he's living his life. He's trusting that covenant, believing that God's going to show up for him when he needs God, believing that God will reward him as God said that God would. And eventually God gets to a place where he changes Abram and Sarai's identity. They become Abraham and Sarai, and they get exalted. Abraham is no longer just the father of nations. He becomes the exalted father of nations. And in that, we see that when we follow the call, when we follow the calling of God, when we're being called out of something, we don't know where we're going. We don't know what it's going to look like. We don't know how it's going to feel, but we just go because God calls us. And in the going, more and more of who God is revealed. More and more of our trust and faith is solidified. More and more of our divine imagination is expanded. And in that, God then makes a promise to us that our faith, all right, this is what he said to Abraham, your faith in believing my word and obeying and leaving is counted to you as righteousness. And so what I want to say is that righteousness, I think today we think righteousness is about following all the rules. There were no rules for Abraham. Abraham was following the leading of God, the call of God, the Spirit of God, the voice of God. And in doing so, he began to trust God. And in trusting God, God saw that and God said, your faith, your trust, that's righteousness. I want to encourage us to come back to righteousness like Abraham had it. Come back to faith like Abraham had it. Not a faith that's based on certainty, not a faith that's based on rule following, not a faith that's based upon how you were raised or what you thought you knew in the community you were born into, but a faith that actually calls you to something. And it calls you to, I believe, purpose. And so in this moment, what is God calling you to? What do you hear God saying? In this moment right now, Black bodies dying, people taking sides, injustice, COVID virus. What do you hear God saying? I'm not talking about coming through your media. This isn't about something that you're trying to, maintain status quo, whatever that may be for you. What is God saying? What has your attention? I think that if you can answer those questions, that begins to reveal your purpose and your call in this moment. What do you hear God saying, or what has your attention? That will reveal your purpose and your call. The questions that you'll have to answer, and these questions reveal what practices or what commitments you may need to make. And they're questions of, what are you going to do about what you hear God saying? What are you going to do about what you hear God saying? And another question would be, what is your vision? What is it that you actually see? What do you see? I think that those two questions deal with practice. What practices will I employ? What am I going to do? What practices? What is the vision? What will I commit to? What am I looking to achieve and looking to accomplish? And then the final questions are about what are the outcomes that you're expecting? What is it that you really, 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 really want? What do you want? Because if you don't know what you want, if you don't know what outcome you want, I think it'll be harder to make the commitments you need. It'll be much harder to have the practices you need. And it won't matter what it is that God is saying because you're not going to do it. Because safety, security, what you know, what makes sense is what you'll hold on to. I believe that I'm being called out of what I'm calling whiteness. I'm being called out of. This has nothing to do with your skin color. It's all about an idea, a way of being trained, a way of being conditioned. And everything that I was taught is now under scrutiny. Everything that I've believed in, I'm being called out of because God is calling me to another way. God is calling me to another way of being and another way of doing that's more reflective of what I believe the Christ has been all about since the beginning of time. A messianic community, a way of being and doing life together that values all life, not just pro-life at the fetal stage as a fetus, but all life from the cradle to the grave, or you can say from the fetus to the grave if you want to. A life where all are included, where there's no place for racism, homophobia, classism, patriarchy, any of these things that suggest that some people are better than others, some people are more valuable than others. Because if we can say that there's one group that's more valuable, eventually you'll be the group that's worth less. And I don't want to live in that world where anyone is considered worth less. I want to be a part of what God is doing in God's kingdom. And I invite you to consider that. I invite you to consider what it is that God is calling you to. I invite you to consider what it is that you really, really want. I invite you to make practices and make decisions to be committed to what God is about. In the midst of all the chaos, COVID-19, racial injustice, economic injustice, this homelessness, the health crisis, all of these things that man has created. Are you called to maintain, to continue going with the flow, continue tweeting, continue Facebook posting? Or do you feel a call to do something or be something else? I want you to think about those things, and I'll have something else to say tomorrow, Saturday, regarding the life of Joseph and seeing what it takes to actually come out from under your people, your places, your things, all that is familiar, all that's been safe and secure, and take the path that God has actually called you on. So I'll drop another little nugget tomorrow. May God bless you and keep you this evening. May your Sabbath be blessed. May you rest and be restored and maintain your energy. Don't let the media control it. See ya. Peace.